we decided on 2 different safaris. After we reframed the question, we came up with the question of how YLE can collaborate effectively with private companies, in particular to produce contents for 15 to 20-year-old demographic. So with that question in mind, we came and we entered into 2 different learning safaris, which were the customer safaris, which would be in the customer, and also the same context in different industry safaris. So we both entered into different safaris to, I suppose, be the customer and then see if we could, survey different cohorts within that industry, just to get a better idea of if our reframing exercise, is the framework we want to use.
So yeah, I'll take you through the first safari that we did. The first safari was, as Rob alluded to there, it was an interview with a person working in a similar industry. The industry was retail, and we interviewed Mark Collins, he's marketing manager for Kilkenny Group. And we also reached out to a lady called Aideen Toomey, who's after sending some feedback, but is still going to send on some more details at a later date. I guess, what did we hear and what did we see? I guess there's no real golden bullet for how to actually target and bring on the younger demographics. The landscape's always changing, and you have to try and stay up with the latest trends. It's a full-time profession in itself, and large companies will employ in-pair teams to constantly monitor this area and stay on top of it. So it's not something that YLE could expect to manage with a small kind of lackluster social media presence. Influencers also might not necessarily be the solution. They can quite easily fall out of fashion and come at a high cost, and we also don't know if they need to be declared as an advertisement. YLE would have to be quite careful in engaging with them just on that basis, because they don't actually do any advertising as a company. So we'd need to actually address that up front, because that might rule out influencers altogether. And we were also told that we shouldn't lose focus on what's driving the core business at the moment. The 40+ age bracket should continue to be serviced, and we just need to strike the balance between bringing on new, younger demographics, but also keeping the older demographics of 40+ satisfied. We fell down a rabbit hole to journey interview on data analytics, which can be applied as an enabler for successful decision making. So you can do segmentation programs, for example, that can identify exactly who to target. And it was hard to find an example, but the idea would be that if you can tell from users of your app, based on their location services, where they go on a Friday and Saturday, if you know that those younger demographics generally tend to go out, you could build your schedule around what they actually want to access in advance of that. So it might be live music, it might be fashion shows, it might be other information like that. And what questions arose? Does the cost benefit of using influencers actually add up, because they can come at a high cost? And what are the other channels for appearing cool and appealing to younger demographics? A social media team, a separate team for generation of content for younger audiences could be created, but you kind of have to know what your KPIs are so that you know if they're actually succeeding, and we don't know if that's very clear for YLE. And what worried us and what inspired us, it made us rethink our approach to influencers, which we've already mentioned. But on the plus side, there's definitely massive opportunity there for YLE to really develop cool brand and social media presence, because that doesn't seem to be being addressed at all at the moment. And they don't necessarily need to compete with Netflix or Amazon Prime or HBO Max for that. A lot of the younger age groups, it seems to be connections that they want. So they could, as long as they're actually giving them a way to connect to one another, that might be enough of a differentiator. The final question then, did everyone perceive it equally? I think, yeah, we were all in agreement with the outcome. But what else supports learning we've seen? One of us worked in Musgrave previously and had experience with the influencers and how they can blow hot and cold. There was the example of an influencer that was brought on to promote a gin, and the sales went up quite a lot the first weekend, and subsequent weekend when they did the same targeting through the influencer, there was nowhere near the same impact of it. So influencers definitely don't seem to be the only solution to getting the younger audience is on board, and we just need to dig a bit deeper on that one. But yeah, they were the main takeaways from our interview with a person in a similar industry, and I think it was quite insightful for us. Jamie, do you want to go?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So the second safari was the customer safari, and we carried this out by giving a questionnaire to students working in the UCC Student Centre. All students were in the age bracket of 18 to 22, and they were asked 10 questions. The questions were related in regards to their media preferences, what platforms they used, and what type of content they viewed. And there was some specific questions in relation to RTE, the state broadcasting body, that's similar to YLE for Finland. As a result, the common themes from the survey were all participants used mobile devices as their platform of choice. The social media is the most common form of media being viewed. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Netflix were consistent throughout all survey participants. There's an average of 3 hours a day spent watching content, with social media being the main source of their news. There was a mixed response following from the local Irish influencers. Some participants did not follow the Irish influencers, and some did. And again, the participants showed that there was limited use of the RTE platforms. So in relation to what do we hear, the survey reinforces both the research findings and YLE concerns that the younger demographic do not use state broadcasting body as either their source of entertainment or their news on a consistent basis. The traditional media sources such as the television, radio, newspaper are all being replaced by mobile devices and live feed news through various social platforms. I suppose, what questions did it arise? How do I stay current with the younger generation by providing the suitable material on the social media while maintaining their service to the older demographic? And what social media offering does YLE have currently, and is it sufficiently resourced? Looking at what was the worry, I suppose that the main worry are YLE able to change traditional journalistic values to create material collaborations to attract their younger viewers? Again, I think, did everyone perceive it equally? I think we all understand that the younger generation have moved away from the traditional platforms, and the social media and the devices are the strong point on what's commonly used. So what we've learned is that the world is changing. There's the traditional media companies need to innovate to stay relevant, and also that the local influencers is not consistently used throughout the participants, so the influencers may not be the correct avenue to recommend. So that sort of summarizes the safari number 2, the customer questionnaire.
So after conducting both safaris, we kind of got a better understanding of how we can kind of tackle our project with YLE. It kind of opened our eyes to see how other companies actually how they used to communicate with their customers, to try and change or to target different demographics. Part as well of the safaris, what we tried to do was to ask questions that we didn't necessarily know the answers to, and ask questions that could provide us with better answers to understand what our issue is with YLE. And I think after conducting both of them, we're all kind of on the same page, and we kind of understand what we need to do now to answer the given problem.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.